Good evening, everyone. As we come together for this important conversation, I want to take a moment to ground us and why we're here. Domestic violence does not just harm individuals, it ripples through families, communities, and systems for too long. The experience of women who have survived abuse and then found themselves criminalized have been overlooked and misunderstood. Many incarcerated women are not behind bars because they are dangerous. They are there because the system failed to see them as survivors. The trauma they endured before incarceration often shaped the choices they made to survive, and instead of being met with compassion and support, they were met with punishment. The truth is that what inspired us to create the Survivors Justice Initiative. This work grew out of the lived experiences of women within our organization, women who knew firsthand that justice must include understanding, healing, and accountability, not incarceration.
Allow me to introduce the ladies that will be speaking and sharing with you all today for today's webinar. So first we have Lucy, who's with ACSP, the Atlanta Community Support Project. We have Donna. Sorry, Donna, I do not have your last name, but she's with Ignite Hope, and she will be sharing for Igniting Hope, I'm sorry. And then finally, we have our very own Ms. Robin Hassan Simpson with Women on the Rise all three of these will be sharing stories and the organizations and those that are out doing the work. So Lucy, I'm not sure if you will go first, but I'll turn it over to Lucy.
Thank you so much, Trendalyn. Very glad to be here. Very happy to talk about this issue. It's one that affects so many people in our communities. And we're really glad to be in partnership with Igniting Hope and Women on the Rise. My name is Lucy Harrell. I'm the founding director of Atlanta Community Support Project. ACSP works at the intersection of legal access and community empowerment, organizing and resourcing each other with the tools we need to self-advocate and engage civically. And that's while people are in prison and after. We really try to support families who are supporting people inside, and anything we can do to get people resources, just so they can advocate to make their lives better, to get out of prison, to get parole, to go through post-conviction remedies that they have a right to access, but might not be able to because they might not otherwise be able to because they can't afford an attorney. So the work of the Survivor Justice Initiative is very near and dear to me and to ACSP. This is something I worked on for a long time personally when I was in prison, trying to just strategize and figure out, how do we get these people relief? How do we get these people, how do we get their cases reviewed again? And can we change the law to make this easier? Because it's just not fair, So this has been a long time coming, and I'm very, very happy to be in partnership and working closely with all the women here who've really helped make the Survivor Justice Act something that has gotten passed this year. So thank you, Trendalyn, and everybody.
Thank you, Lucy. So a part of what Women on the Rise does is really being able to bring forth the stories that are associated of why this bill was so important and why getting it passed was so important. Being a domestic violence survivor myself, I understood that once we endured what we had to go through before being incarcerated, just when you actually get incarcerated, due to your case, it's like a second time of being abused by someone. And that's one reason why we really talk about that we are survivors and not victims, for number one. And then we also let people know that a lot of people that actually have gone through domestic violence, it's not a choice of simply leaving. It's not a choice of simply being able to say, this, this can't happen to me, or this, I know a lot of times before I even had to go through mine, I always thought, why people just didn't leave. And we're here to uplift the stories of why that's not as easy said than done, what has happened to a lot of people that have put them in the situations of survival, to be able to, get through their being abused. So I think this bill is very important to us, because what we've learned is that a lot of times that we feel like we don't have a choice in something, and we do take matters into our own hand, we shouldn't be victimized by the system for doing so. So we're very, very happy to be a part of this, for us to be able to uplift the stories of women that are still serving time in prison because of domestic violence. Working very closely with people that I was in prison with Lucy, with Paige. It was good to just know that the ones that you actually did time with, we didn't forget about the ones we left behind.
So Donna, she's having some tech difficulties, but she is the chair of Igniting Hope Georgia. I can just briefly mention Igniting Hope Georgia is also collaborating on this, and really this is an organization that Donna's daughter Beth Muse started, and Beth is still inside, working with the women who are on the advisory committee of Igniting Hope, who are all serving life sentences, who are DV survivors. So this work is very personal to them, and we're glad to have them continuing as partners. And I am going to start us off by showing a Survivor Justice Initiative intro video. I do want to give the caveat that this video was made before the Survivor Justice Act was passed. So as you'll see, it talks about, could Georgia be next? And we're happy to say, yes, Georgia is next. So
how could we give her what she needed instead of a prison sentence?
We need to look at how to help women who have been through what they've been through.
You're trying to punish people for just trying to live. And he threatened to kill me. How do we know it couldn't have been me?
And it's not like you're in there and they're fixing things or they're helping you become better. They're making it worse.
It has been a groundbreaking week at the state capitol when it comes to passing legislation in support of domestic violence victims.
The Oklahoma Survivors Act was made for people who survived domestic violence but were locked up for crimes against their abusers.
The legislation directs the courts to reduce a criminal defendant's sentence if they can prove that domestic abuse played a significant factor in their offense. Domestic violence survivors were paying attention to the proceedings on the House floor.
They were able to watch the vote in the prison library.
Finally being heard and believed.
Their abuse is being validated, their experiences are being validated, but also repaired.
That I can just move on with life and spend time with my family and my children.
The journey to bring home incarcerated survivors of domestic abuse starts now.
Okay.
I think you can lock up people that we're really afraid of and not that we're just mad at.
This isn't about whether or not what she did was right or wrong, but we get to consider the abuse that she sustained at that time.
Unless you've experienced it, you cannot say what we should have done, what we could have done. It's not that easy.
She could have ended up dead that day. You're isolated. You don't have access to money. You don't have access to family. You've been told that you're useless, and you believe it.
And that's what prison is, that the way they talk to you, the way they demean you, you're doing nothing but furthering the abuse.
I'm not ever advocating for the ending of someone's life, but I think that there is a real sense of helplessness that comes along with experiencing the multitude abuse.
Get her out of those situations. Tell her she's worth something.
Now, on the outside, she pledged to help other domestic abuse survivors still fighting.
We are fighting for them on the other side.
It feels so good to sit down and talk to someone and say, it's possible to come out of it.
I feel confident. I'm a good mom. I have a good marriage. He's not abusive in any way. Let's see how it got
to where it got to, and what can we do to fix it?
Thank you for that, Lucy. So I really want to talk about how domestic violence hurts the community, and how it separates women from their children. I know that part of, my situation of when I was dealing with domestic violence, I really had to think about how I can protect my daughter from this, how I can protect her not to see everything that was happening to me. I'm a big advocate now with telling people that children know much more than what we think they know. So I've learned, and I tell other people that you think you're hiding it, you're not. And it's a way to break the cycle of trying to survive. But when you do decide to leave, or you do try to leave, all of the issues, domestic violence doesn't end when you decide to leave, when you decide to walk out the door. It's just another set of things that you have to deal with. We're not even touching on the fact of you have to deal with the financial insecurities, especially with your abuser, who is not going to help you when you leave, who is not going to be able to be there for you to help support your children when you do leave. So I'll tell people that's another form of abuse, to being able to have that control over you, so you can't sustain yourself and your children. And that's another reason why a lot of people stay, is because of that reason. And also, we talk about emotional abuse. There's a lot of times where we were in situations where I would say, I wish he would just hit me and get it over with. And that those scars can heal from the physical abuse, but the emotional abuse doesn't heal. It takes much, much, much more determination, therapy to get past when you're talking about the emotional scars that are left from being abused. I know that once people have to endure figuring out, do I do this to survive my attacker? Once I'm being attacked and things happen, or I'm being coerced into doing something from the force of being attacked by myself or my children, a lot of times that lands us in prison. And because of that, we should not have to worry about, now I got a life sentence because I was just trying to survive. And like I said earlier, it puts you in a situation where now I have to survive the system because I survived my survivor. So this bill here really speaks on that, and speaks on the fact of a lot of things that people have to go through just to be okay. You shouldn't have to, on the other end, have to worry about, now how do I fight a system to gain my freedom? Like, I was just trying to get my freedom here, and now I got to get my actual physical freedom. So this bill is so important to us, because not only does it touch us personally, but it also, think about the many women, the many friends, families that, we made when we were inside, that we know that had to go through the same thing. And I always say, by the grace of God, I didn't end up with a life sentence. But I think about that, and I think about how it was so close, and how it could possibly have been me. So that is the reason why I don't look at the fact of, okay, I got my freedom and now I can go on with my life. And I know Latoya Dickens on here, we were incarcerated together, and the things that she had to go through. And I just think it's very brave of her to be able to get out, talk about that, bring this to light, to show the different, things that people have gone through that have landed them in prison. And I also tell a lot of people, just because someone's in prison you don't know their story. You don't know what landed them there. Even if they have what they call a murder charge, doesn't mean that they are someone that goes out and just, I did this because I wanted to. It's out of survival. And this bill is what is basically recognizing that, to be able now to recognize that people are put in the situations, no matter the class you're in, no matter what your background is, your educational background, no matter your race, that anybody can be put into this situation where they feel like they have no hope. And then things happen, and now I have to go and serve what currently is a life sentence in prison, which is 30 years. So I am very grateful for this bill. I'm very grateful that we were able to be a part of it, to share our stories, to bring to light all of the things that we've talked about. It's a way of healing as well. That's why this is so close to me, because as you see in the video, I'm in tears. And you would think, after all this time of spending 10 years in prison, that I would have gotten over it. It doesn't go away. It still sits with you. It still sits on your heart when you talk about it. But this makes it much lighter. I'm able now to talk about this issue and not get so emotional, because I see that there's hope for a lot of other people that have yet to experience it, and then people that are still experiencing it by being incarcerated. And I'm just very proud that people are able to listen and to understand that this is a reality. So thank you. And I'll turn it back over. I see Donna has made it on. I'm not really sure if she's okay. It's Miss Donna.
Yes, thank you. I'm so honored to be here in this group and to share exactly the struggles that brought us to this point for everyone on this panel. We started actually back in 2014, I believe, over 10 years ago, realizing with our events and the tragedies and traumas that our Beth had gone through, that it wasn't just her, that the legal system had brought us to that point. It was a tragedy that happened not only the morning of January the 9th in her home, but it was more that happened in the courtroom that brought us to the, as she says, worse than the hell that she had already lived through. So we took that, trying to encourage her and give her hope. And in the midst of it, we figured out that there were a lot more people, just not just Beth, that had suffered this kind of problem. And there was no hope for any of them unless some of us with boots on the ground could get busy and try to change it. So in the meantime, Beth and Lucy encountered each other and started with Lucy's legal expertise putting together a House bill. Thus came House Bill 702 that we presented to the legislative body in a subcommittee hearing on in 2015. But 2016 was an election year and it never got out of committee. So we had some awesome people that were trying to support us, but we were actually rookies. I knew nothing about the political arena. I had some folks that knew more about it than I did, but we had such little time with such little knowledge that I'm just sorry to say that it didn't work. But the foundation was built. And then we had other players with some strong knowledge and abilities to put some more boots on the ground, as we say. And House Bill 582 was created. And much prayer and serious thought and dedication. And I contribute most of it to the people that are on this call. But it's amazing how social media can actually join forces and cause things to happen, because at that point I'm not really physically able to be with that much boots on the ground anymore. But man, I could sit here and click these buttons and ask all my friends and acquaintances to start contacting their elected officials, and they did. So I'm just so excited about being here, still being excited about the fact that it's grown to this point, and just hope that we can see what happens next as the doors open, as these people need to be out and actually joining forces with us to see that this trauma and this injustice is resolved and the courts can better understand these cases as they come forward. So I appreciate it. And I just love and appreciate each of you and the hard work that you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Donna. And I have next video that Lucy will play.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Donna. Appreciate y'all.
My name is Robin Hassan Simpson. I am the executive director with Women on the Rise. We are women of color who are impacted by the justice system. I definitely feel like my experiences shaped me into my relationships. I've always gotten into relationships where the men were older. And I think it's because in my mind, I felt like they could protect me more. He was 8 years older than I was. I was only 23 years old. I used to see him be like aggressive to other people, and so it made me feel like, oh, he'll stand up for me. The first time he actually hit me, I remembered I said something back to him. Like, I finally stood up for myself, and instead of just sitting there and just taking it. When he hit me, it was like shock, I guess. Like, I can't believe you did that. And I think now, like, I don't know why you couldn't believe that, Robin. Like, that's the next, like, all the verbal, like, why couldn't you believe he would do this? A lot of us have experienced the same thing that we're trying to change. And knowing that if this law would have been in place, a lot of women that I actually met in prison would not have been there. We feel like you can't protect yourselves, and that people don't understand unless they've been through it, what women actually have to endure, that it's not as easy to just walk away. But of course it was oh, I'm so sorry. I got the flowers. I used to get the teddy bears, and I was the typical, he's sorry because he bought me flowers. He told me he was sorry, it wouldn't happen again. And then it got to the point where it came, well, I shouldn't have said this, or I pushed it too far. The abuse stopped until after I had Nadia. And it started up 3 weeks after I had her, because I had a C-section. And he wanted to be sexual. And of course, the doctor said, you have to wait until this amount of time, and he didn't want to wait. And so that's when it went from verbal abuse, physical abuse, to sexual abuse. I just really want people to understand that when women are in that situation, we pretty much know that we're going to die. We have a natural instinct that everybody on this planet has, and that's self-preservation. I've called the police many times off of that threat of he's going to kill me. I believed him one time when Nadia was, still newborn, that he had said it and he had choked me. And I called the police, but I got away from him. And the police said one of us had to leave the house. And unfortunately, it was me. And I'm like, I'm breastfeeding, I have a newborn, and I had nowhere to go. I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have any money to get a hotel. So I jumped into the car and I took her with me, and I went to a parking lot, and that's where we slept. There were times that he went to jail. His mom would always bail him out. He had a dad that was a preacher, and they knew that. They would come and they would bail him out. And there was times that the police actually knew his dad, and they would talk him into calm down or whatever, and they wouldn't take him to jail. The remarkable thing one time is that the police had told me if I didn't stop calling so much, that I would go to jail the next time. He kept his word. I called again with a black eye. I went to jail. We work with women that are at Atlanta City Detention Center and Fulton County Jail with reentry. When you get on the other side, it's such a wonderful feeling that you forget that you're feeling normal, you're feeling human again, because you don't feel all of that when you're going through it. I don't think the law had it open enough to really talk about the circumstances around why people do what they do. That's why I'm really big on, let's look at why. Let's treat the root cause instead of, you did a crime, you need to be punished. You're doing nothing but further traumatizing us by criminalizing us for, what we've been through and the choices that you think we should have made. A lot of times that you put people in prison, criminalizing people for what they've done, you're doing nothing but furthering the abuse. I feel like a lot of times, I'm in prison and the things we went through mentally, mental abuse to me is worse than the physical. A lot of times I would be like, why don't you just hit me instead of just saying these things to me? Because you say the words get in here and they don't leave you. And that's what prison is, that the way they talk to you, the way they demean you, it's like I was used to it. And so when it's happening and then a situation happens and we survive it, then to get punished for it, I've survived him, but now I got to survive the system. We need to look at how to help women who have been through what they've been through, and by the state further criminalizing them for their own abuse is just not the answer. And then when you do get out and you do come home, you still have that. And it's not like you're in there and they're fixing things or they're helping you become better. They're making it worse. I feel like when having a membership or working here with these ladies, not feeling alone is it's such like an empowering feeling, because you do have that isolation when you're in that abusive relationship. You have that isolation when you're incarcerated, and you feel at that time, nobody gets it. Nobody understands what I'm going through. Your family members, which I have a very close family, but I knew they didn't get it. Even after all this time, that sometimes I'm still in fear. that I don't know where he is, or like the girls don't let me answer the door. Like y'all never see me answer the door. They don't let me answer the door, and it's like, why do I still have to be in fear? But I still am, because I don't know, you know, where he is, what he's doing. I can tell, my close friends now. I can tell anybody in the organization, my members, anybody. I can tell them, like, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm dealing with, and I get the love and the support that I need. And then all of them, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But having this kind of fellowship with women that have, endured this, it just gives you like, okay, I have the power to fight back.
Robin, thank you so much for sharing your story in that way. Latoya, there are others who have, I mean, y'all are just so brave to me for sharing your story and using the terrible things that you've experienced to help so many others. So I really want to, express that.
You're welcome, Lucy.
Yes, thank you, Lucy. Because I had to go off camera a few times. I was telling Nikki it still angers me that after all this time it still affects you. But I feel like a lot of people don't do it, but we have to do it. If we don't do it, then how is things going to change? So that's how I have to lay it at my feet. But thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you so much. All right. I want to transition to the not so emotional part of the presentation and just talk a little bit about the legal implications of the law, what the law provides for, how it can help people, whether they're in the pretrial stage or post-conviction. This is about the Georgia Survivor Justice Act, House Bill 582. It was passed this year in 2025. So super brand new. It went into effect on July the 1st. And I just want to go through, what's in the bill. What did the bill do legally? And what does that mean for people? So the first thing is, self-defense is really this legal defense mechanism that anybody who's accused of a quote crime against a person can use. Historically, it's been super, super difficult. I mean, it is super difficult to prove self-defense in general, but I think especially for survivors of intimate partner violence, where that violence played a part in the situation, it's been very, very difficult in Georgia and other states to prove this. And there are particular gender disparities that exist in proving this. We are doing some homicide conviction research in Georgia, and what we're finding is that men more often than not get options for reduced sentences to manslaughter from murder charges because they are deemed more often to have committed a killing based upon provocation or passion. A lot of times, even in the law, this is based on sexual jealousy, like, oh, she cheated on me or something like that. But then in the adverse situations where women killed a male partner just simply out of protection for themselves or their children, they don't get the same charge reductions from murder charges. And that is just a blatant gender disparity that, of course, everybody on this call and everybody in Georgia doing this work knows that that's the way it is and that's the way it exists. But we haven't had the data to show it. So hopefully we will soon. But I want to flag for House Bill 582 that it expanded the definition of self-defense by expressly including abuse. So now survivors get a chance to explain the real belief that they were in danger, that their lives were in danger. It's just like Robin talked about, it doesn't have to be said like that, the threat to kill you. Like, it's there for so many people. And it's finally good to see this in our code so that a judge can look at that and say, yes, that is a factor that goes to the weight of an argument for self-defense. The next thing is that House Bill 582, the Survivor Justice Act, expanded coercion. It really created an expanded definition of coercion that many legal folks believe is broader than any other state's coercion law. So this is a hugely significant thing. Like, in my mind, this is how Georgia provides a blueprint for other states going forward when they want to think about creating survivor justice bills. Coercion is an important concept in domestic violence and intimate partner violence situations. Many people who are being coerced for long periods of time don't even understand that it's happening in the moment because the compounded trauma just carries on for so long. Or sometimes people don't understand the degree to which it's happening. Like, going back to your story and your video, what you shared in the video, Robin, just like it's starting out with verbal and then going to physical, and just that escalation. That's how coercion just increases by degrees for people in individual situations. So under the updated law, we can look at the individual person's experience and history of abuse rather than applying this black and white kind of objective analysis that says, well, was the act that they committed the only way they could have avoided physical harm? Like, literally avoided. This is just such a weird legal thing that has always been the case. So under the new law now, the courts can actually consider whether the action that the person is being criminalized for was necessary. It uses that legal word necessary based on how this particular person was being coerced. So that is a wildly different legal analysis than what we had previously. The next thing is that the new bill created a new evidentiary standard in our code. And I just want to talk about this is an evidentiary standard for sentencing or standards for mitigating sentences. So I want to talk about what that is and how it works. Basically, the bill contains now a list of some potential types of evidence that can be used to prove the abuse, and it includes things like new types of expert evidence. It includes hearsay, which is often historically excluded as evidence in these cases. It includes character evidence, which has also been very hard to get in and is often just as a general rule excluded in criminal trials. The other thing is that it really lays out what evidence can look like for a particular person, even though evidence can look different for every survivor, right? That could be police reports, that could be hospital reports, but it could be all kinds of other stuff. And so having this suggestive list, a lot of the lawyers thought that this would be a good way to like give judges who didn't have any idea how to consider DV evidence like something to work with, like some suggestions, right? So that was the point in creating the what part of this new evidentiary standard. The thing is, for people who were convicted a long time ago, like really before there was a cultural shift to thinking about domestic violence within the context of people being criminalized for defending themselves, some of this stuff might have been excluded altogether. Like, it might not have even been allowed to be brought into the courtroom in the first place. So the new evidentiary standard says not only can it come in, but yes, this is the kind of stuff we want to come in because we want to show on the record that there was abuse. The next part of this is how does this work? So this evidence works cumulatively. It works collectively, and what we want to do in these cases is show that abuse was, and this is what the law says now, in the new bill, quote, a significant contributing factor to the offense. So that is significant contributing factor means that, especially in situations where someone ended up being killed, we want to say that, the reason for that was because he or she was being abused over a long period of time and their life was in danger, right? This just isn't something that just happened. So we are trying to show that significant contributing factor. And that is kind of the crux of the new evidentiary standard for these survivor cases. Under the new standard, there's two ways that people can have their sentences mitigated or reduced from what it would normally be if they were convicted of that particular offense. The first way is just a preponderance of the evidence standard, what I talked about before, like how we take all of these reports, all of these, whatever it is, affidavits from people who witnessed the abuse happening and things like that, and put it together. We want to view that stuff all together, and that helps with proving that abuse was the contributing factor under a preponderance of the evidence standard. The other way that people can have their sentences mitigated, though, is just simply if the prosecutor consents. So, this is a very significant part of this law. You all might have heard this legal term of art called something is in the interests of justice. So under the new Georgia Survivor Justice Act, there are two separate ways. Either a person can put together this evidence and have this collective evidence that shows by a preponderance of the evidence that they were being abused, and that's what contributed to the situation. Or if they are able to have conversations with the prosecutor's office and the prosecutor says, hey, we know that this person was being abused and you don't have to go through the process of doing all this. It may be a stretch, but I think that it is a very good thing to know that in our law, we have this component where a prosecuting attorney has the discretion to just say, yes, we can just consent to this and move this process along and get this person's sentence reduced. The thing I will say about this new standard that was created is that we don't know how this is going to play out yet, right? The courts haven't begun interpreting petitions. They really haven't started collectively reviewing a lot of these cases on the front end as a separate sentencing component from whatever the person was convicted of. So a lot of this is just that we don't know yet because it's brand spanking new law and judges haven't had the opportunity to review it and to apply it. The next thing that the Survivor Justice Act did was it provided the actual new sentencing guidelines, okay? And this is in the same statute as the evidentiary standard that's required for a person to ask for a reduced sentence. So very much like death penalty cases, House Bill 582 allows for a sentencing phase to be treated as separate and distinct from the conviction. Okay, so not that I necessarily agree with this, but there is an argument nationally to be made for doing it this way. And a lot of people in other places have argued this, where it's like, the state kind of gets what they want by having the person be convicted of whatever they're charging them with. But then also it takes the situation into account by allowing the person to have a reduced sentence and providing the actual reduced sentencing range. So in Georgia, under the Survivor Justice Act, the new sentencing scheme goes like this. If you were convicted of an offense that is punishable by a life sentence or a death sentence, then the range becomes 10 to 30 years, and that is with the ability for the judge to even depart downward from that. And that sentence is parole eligible. So right now, if someone was convicted of murder and they have a life sentence, which is what they would have gotten under the law, let's just say, for example, back in 2010, that person would not even be able to be reviewed for parole until 2040, 30 years after that. So under the Survivor Justice Act, now that person, if they petitioned the court and went back and had their sentence reviewed, remember, their sentence is being reviewed completely separate from their conviction. So they're not going to mess with the fact that they were convicted of murder, but what they're going to say is now this person has a right, if they get over this evidentiary bar, if they can prove by a preponderance of the evidence that they were abused and that was the significant contributing factor to the incident, then they can get their sentence reduced to 10 to 30 years and maybe even lower with that if the judge decides that they want to depart. So this is hugely significant. Now, for other offenses that don't carry traditionally sentences of life or death, the sentencing range is going to be a minimum of 1 year up to half of whatever the regular sentencing range is for that offense. So if we think about, for instance, voluntary manslaughter, if the max for voluntary manslaughter normally is 20 years. So under the Survivor Justice Act, if a survivor was convicted of manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, and was able to prove that the abuse was a significant contributing factor to them being convicted of that charge, instead of being a max of 20 years, the max possible sentence they can get would be 10 years, because that would be half. So I hope that makes sense to people for how the new sentencing guidelines are. And then the last and most important thing, at least in my opinion, is that the Survivor Justice Act created a process for retroactive sentencing. So this means, you know what? Those women who started this in prison, they are not going to be left behind. And there was, and I see you shaking your head, Robin. And the thing is, everybody knows that's been doing this work. There was never a chance that we were going to allow that to be cut out of this bill. And we're so happy that it was just able to be delineated so straightforwardly and passed like that. But basically, going back to those two ways that people can have a sentence mitigated, there's two ways that people can get sentenced retroactively who are already in prison, already serving that sentence. One is that they can petition the court, all right? Create an argument for how they meet the evidentiary standard for proving abuse that I mentioned under 17-10-22. If they can meet it in their argument, clearly the state is going to file probably a rebuttal argument. They're going to respond in some kind of way. But then the law says that unless the court finds that the argument isn't trustworthy or that the facts are unreliable in some kind of way, that they should grant a hearing. They should have a hearing on this, that the person, the survivor should be heard. Maybe for the first time, a lot of these people will be having this evidence brought out into court, stuff that their families and their communities knew was going on for such a long time, will finally be able, at least in that way, to be vindicated by having this stuff legally be allowed to be brought into court and considered by a judge. So that is the first way, through a petition. And also going back to the fact that the conviction, remember, and the sentencing is completely separate in these situations under the new law. That should make this process even more straightforward. After they petition, after they have the hearing, after they present the evidence, the court should just move to resentence them, and that should be that. And hopefully what we're going to see is that happens, that people get resentenced, that we can then send those new sentencing dispositions straight on over to GDC and the parole board and get these people home. Now, the second part of that, as I mentioned before, the alternate way of doing this is to get prosecutor consent. This basically means that the person is filing a consented petition. So them or a lawyer would write up a petition that they have already had conversations with the prosecutor's office, and they can say that the prosecution consents, the state consents to this being filed. And guess what? Under the Survivor Justice Act, the new law says that the judge should grant it. If they get something that's consented by the prosecution, they should just grant it. So that's even more straightforward, probably harder to do than proving all the evidence, but it is a way to get it done. The only thing that I want to flag is there's a conundrum, a particular conundrum in our community with this, and it is that prosecutors don't like to talk to people who are representing themselves pro se, and that is a problem. And one of the things that Atlanta Community Support Project has kind of put out there for our folks inside is that, hey, we might not have the resources like to get pro bono representation for everybody, but the very least thing we can do is if people are adamant about filing something, we can reach out to the person in that county that's going to handle the case and say, hey, heads up, this is coming through. So I think that is important. You know, a lot of prosecutors have been supportive of this initiative in Georgia, and we're really, really looking to them to kind of like put their money where the mouth is now and look at some of these cases and have some of these conversations. Okay, so I wanted to just briefly mention like some of the non-explicit impacts of this law. The passage of this Survivor Justice Act created hope for people incarcerated. Like even people, we have people in our community, lots and lots of men in our community, because those are mostly the people who are in prison in Georgia. But we have so many people who have just been very, very happy for what this means for people serving time alongside of them. Justice would be that they would have never been incarcerated. But at this point, this has created a lot of hope for people. And it's not just people who are going to be able to use the bill. It really, really goes to show that when we organize and when we get together and have an initiative that we do everything we can to push forward, we can get some change. And that means something to a lot of people. Now, like I said, a lot of those prosecutors who've supported this initiative, a lot of them have felt like they were going to get community pushback from trying to help people get some kind of relief because they didn't have a legal mechanism to do that. So now they're going to have something they can hang a legal argument on. And I think that is great for the ones who are going to do it. And then I would just say the bigger impacts of the passage of the Georgia Survivor Justice Act is just like a legal acknowledgement of the trauma. Like this is just something that gets X'd out of the law so many times and in so many ways, particularly in criminal law. And so just having that acknowledgement in the code is very important, I think. And also, even though this is a very small inching, it is an inching away from incarceration as a proper response or solution to any kind of trauma or harm. So I think anything we can do to think about that is great for the larger community of people, who don't believe that incarceration is a solution for anything. All right, so what's next? I just wanted to lay this out. You know, I said pretrial, people who are in the pretrial stages, survivors needing to mitigate their sentence in the front end. What can they do? Well, they can reach out. The Survivor Justice Initiative, it's us, it's ACSP and Women on the Rise and Igniting Hope. It's also the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Georgia Justice Project. They have done so much legal work around this. The biggest thing that people can do to help themselves is just to let some of us know, and we can share that information with the lawyers. We can share that information with our partners, so they are aware that somebody has a case pre-trial happening. Document and save everything. I mean, this goes for everything that has to do with being prosecuted in a criminal court, but especially for domestic violence situations. Like, document and save as much as you can. Save those text messages. Save, whatever it is that, the court or the state might not look for, but that exists. And the other thing I want to say is, people shouldn't think that they have a bad public defender just because their public defender doesn't know about this stuff. It's very new. You know, there are, like I mentioned, GCADV and Georgia Justice Project and some of the pro bono lawyers in our Legal Access Action Program. Like, these lawyers know how they're going to work with this new law. So reach out to us. We can get your lawyer some support as they help advocate for you. I wanted to talk about post-conviction because people inside have asked, like, what can we do? How do we get a petition? And I think the thing is just the same thing. Get on our radar, like write to one of our organizations, like let us know that you have one of these cases, that you have evidence, and that you need to be filing a petition. We're going to work on a Survivor Justice Act guide. We're going to be asking Women on the Rise to contribute to that as well, and Igniting Hope, because collectively we are the experts on this. The people in our communities are the people dealing with this, and we want to get them the information in a way that comports with what they're doing and how their cases are and the nuances that only they know about. We have kind of been waiting and asking people not to file pro se until some of these are litigated. But I mean, just like I said, some of our jailhouse lawyers know these issues the best. So people have a right to file these petitions. We're here to help any way we can. I would not tell anybody not to file something. That is your right, and you should exercise your rights if you can. But let's think about experts. Let's think about ways we can support and help you make your self-advocacy as great as it can be. And then start collecting evidence. We talked about that. Same thing goes for people inside. ACSP has some how-to guides for people to get open records and records on their cases, from the GBI and the courts and other places. So we're glad to provide those kind of resources. And like I mentioned before, prosecutor communication, I think, is something that we can also help with.
Thank you, Lucy, so much for breaking that down for us. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here and share this space. These conversations help us keep breaking the silence and bringing awareness to how domestic violence impacts our communities, especially our sisters who've been incarcerated and those who we've left behind. Before we close out, does anyone have any questions, comments, or reflections they'd like to share? If you would like to put it in the chat, we're also open to that. I'm checking the chat now, but you can come off mute anytime and share anything that you would like with us today.
I'm known as Chatty Joy. But I just want to say, as a person who wasn't involved in any of that, just as a person who's committed to this area, Lucy and Robin and the person who started it out, Donna, just it's amazing to me what you have accomplished. And I just, thank you, Lord. There's so many people that will profit from this. And it's amazing. So just thank you, thank you, thank you.
And also put some resources for resources inside of the chat. And Ms. Trundlin made sure that she put Lucy's and Robin's email in the chat. So if you would like to copy that down before you leave, please do. One question is, what is the process after release? Come off of mute, Latoya.
For sentence reduction.
Oh, for sentence reduction.
Toward getting off parole.
I think I can answer that, Latoya. And I think, like, from a legal perspective, it's just going to be the same process as petitioning post-conviction for anybody, right? Like, if you have a life sentence, you're entitled now to have a sentence of, 10 to 30 years, or if the judge wants to depart, less than that. So I think early termination, not per se early termination, but early termination using the petition process is a really viable option for people who've already been released, for sure. Thanks for asking that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hey, Melanie, I just wanted to say thank you all. I came on a little late, but I just want to thank Lucy and all our partners at Atlanta Community Support Project, and all of our partners at Women on the Rise, Robin, of course, Trent, and Brittany. I can't see everybody on the screen. Brittany, you're with us. Melanie, Donna with Igniting Hope, all of our partners. This just to pulling this together. It's hey, Britt, it's really great. And just being able to pull this Talk Justice Tuesday together in a matter of weeks. But I know you all can do it. We have great partners with the Justice Reform Partnership. So without a doubt, just to be able to come and do this great conversation at noon today. We had a lot of other folks who wanted to come on. We had some technical difficulties, but I think we've got it recorded and we'll be able to send it out to everybody, Lucy.
Yes, we will. That's right, Nikki. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank y'all. But I just want to say thank you all so much and just be able to break this down. It's very technical, but just to break it down so easy so folks can be able to understand, what this law means for our friends that we know that are still, fighting for relief. So I just appreciate you all doing this. And I know at the beginning, I don't know, at the beginning, you talked a little bit about the partnership. Thank you, Melanie and Trendlin. Just a couple things before we do sign off. We do have 2 more Talk Justice Tuesdays. I'm going to pull my little shameless plug in. 2 more Talk Justice Tuesdays, November the 11th and December the 9th, and we'll close the year out. Just check our website for those particular dates. And that's all I'm going to share. But just thank you all so much for joining us.